Welcome to the future of Israel and the Jewish people. We're still studying the book of Job. We're still trying to make sure that none of us become Job's friends and give him all kinds of wrong advice. And so as we're moving into Job chapter 22, we're here again with our good friend John, excuse me.
How you doing?
Welcome.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay, we're going to get right to it.
Yep.
Job chapter 22. Then Eliphaz the Temanite responded, "Can a vigorous man be of use to God? Or a wise man be useful to himself? Is there any pleasure in the Almighty if you are righteous, or profit if you make your ways perfect? Is it because of your reverence that he reproves you, that he enters into judgment against you? Is not your wickedness great, and your iniquities without end? For you have taken pledges of your brothers without cause, and stripped men naked. To the weary you have given no water to drink. From the hungry you have withheld bread. But the earth belongs to the mighty man, and the honorable man dwells in it. You have sent widows away empty, and the strength of orphans has been crushed. Therefore snares surround you, and sudden dread terrifies you, or darkness so that you cannot see, and an abundance of water covers you. Is not God in the height of heaven? Look also at the distant stars." How did they know they were distant, Frank? "Look also at the distant stars, how high they are. You say, what does God know? Can he judge through the thick darkness? Clouds are a hiding place for him so that he cannot see. And he walks on the vault of heaven. Will you keep to the ancient path which wicked have trod? Who were snatched away before their time, whose foundations were washed away by a river? They said to God, depart from us. And what can the Almighty do to them? Yet he filled their houses with good things, but the counsel of the wicked is far from me. And the righteous see and are glad. The innocent mock them, saying, truly our adversaries are cut off, and their abundance the fire has consumed. Yield now, and be at peace with him. Thereby good will come to you. Please receive instruction from his mouth, and establish his words in your heart. If you return to the Almighty, you will be restored. If you remove unrighteousness far from your tent, and place your gold in the dust, the gold of Ophir among the stones of the brooks, then the Almighty will be your gold, and choice silver to you. For then you will delight in the Almighty, and lift up your face to God. You will pray to him, he will hear you. You will pay your vows. You will also decree a thing, and it will be established for you, and a light will shine on your ways. When you are cast down, and you speak with confidence, and the humble person he will save. He will deliver one who is not innocent. He will be delivered through the cleanness of your hands.
Sounds like he's telling us to pray for people's salvation when our own lives are right.
To me, it sounds like Eliphaz is lying through his teeth.
Doesn't believe what he's saying.
Oh, he believes what he's saying, but he doesn't have a clue about what the reality really is. Listen to what he says to Job. Listen to what he says here. He's saying, starting in verse 6, listen to the accusations against this good and righteous man. You have taken the pledges of your brothers without cause, and stripped men naked. To the weary you have given no water to drink. From the hungry you have withheld bread.
Yeah.
What nonsense this is. What horrible slander this is. And he goes on and on and on. And then to throw salt in the opened wound, he says, yield now and be at peace with him. He's telling Job, just acknowledge that God is right. Acknowledge that you're wicked. You are a wicked man. Acknowledge your wickedness. Yield now and be at peace with him. Thereby good will come to you. Please receive instruction from his mouth. This is all the while we know how Job lived. Yet Eliphaz the Temanite is now counseling him this awful stuff. And you will pray to him and he will hear you. And you will pay your vows. You will decree a thing and it will be established for you. So this is, not only is it, again, you pointed this out a couple of shows ago. technically he's right. Technically, he's right. Technically, if we yield to God, good will come to us. Technically, he's right. But he's talking to the most yielded man to God on the earth at that time. So his words can't be anything but insulting. They certainly can't be edifying.
Yeah, you know, they remind me that they had a long time to travel to get here, okay? They were from the east, okay? And I don't know how far that is, but in those days, travel was not easy, okay? So when you went someplace, they had a long time to discuss this before they got to Job, okay? Around those campfires at night, okay? Why is this happening to Job? You know, this, that. And it seems if they're all on the same page, okay? As if they all were in agreement, and now they're living up to what they agreed is the problem.
I never thought of that. They might have rehearsed all this.
You know,
I never thought of that.
you know, I don't think they rehearsed what they were going to say, but they probably already came to a conclusion that,
We're
okay,
familiar with that. They had all their talking points all in a row, I think, maybe.
you know,
That could be.
because what they're saying, and this is what bothers me lots of times when I'm among people who are religious, and, you know, people do prosper and do well. And, you know, it says, I mean, the blessing that we give people, Aaron was given, was that you would prosper, that God would bless you, and that he would shine on you, and that he would show favor to you. So there's nothing wrong with prospering. But people want to always, especially those that haven't prospered, to make it sound like the only way they could have prospered is they had to do something wrong. Okay? The system is
That's the other side of the coin, sure.
Oh, terrible.
Sure, that's
terrible.
the other side of the coin. That the only way, you were just lucky, or you were something. Or they detract from that. That's true. But in this case, they're focusing not on how Job got prosperous so much. Although this in chapter 22 we see the first hinting that maybe Job got prosperous by robbing the orphans.
His brother, yeah.
Yeah. So what you're saying is dead on in terms of now they're not only attacking Job that he must be wicked because his wealth was taken away. Now he's accusing him, it seems, of how he got it in the first place. How did you get wealthy in the first place? You must have stolen from or oppressed the widow and the orphan, or these other horrible slanders that we know are not the case.
No. When you use your God-given talents, okay, to help your fellow man, you should succeed tremendously. I mean, right now in the nation of Israel, for instance, they are coming up with one invention after another, and they're all to solve problems for their fellow man. You know, they don't have any oil, so they discovered gas. Okay? They are isolated in some areas, so they're producing their own food. You know, they're not relying on their neighbors or most of the world to trade with them. They're basically developing stuff that people desperately need. They're now selling to, of all places, America, military stuff. Can you imagine?
Ain't that something?
So we found out that they're so advanced that in some areas we could use their help, especially with intelligence. Okay? And so
That's interesting.
sometimes we're not good enough to keep the confidence that we should when they share things with us because of the press, but that's another story. Do you have anything else on this terrible dialogue?
No, just it's typical of what happens between human beings in under duress like this. We see it again. It's just true to form, and to me it validates the authenticity of this book.
Well, you really have to look out to when you're approached by your friends and you are prospering and you choose to drive a BMW, okay? I don't need to come to you and say, boy, how much does that cost you a month, okay? You can afford it. And if you want to drive a safer car and a more performance, a more reliable car, that's your business. I'm supposed to say mazel tov. God bless you, okay? God bless you, right?
I mean.
And I'm not supposed to turn around and try to
Big
talk
isn't
you
the
into
hate.
driving a less expensive car. Okay? You know,
Wow.
I remember when people were buying Saabs all the time. Why? Because they were designed in such a way by an aviation company that if they had a head-on collision, the engine actually dropped out of the car and stopped the car from being impacted by the approaching car.
Wow.
It was built that the suspension would break on impact to prevent the driver from losing his life. You know, if you're a guy running a corporation of $10 million and you got 2,500 employees or whatever, maybe you belong in a car like that, okay? If you can afford it, okay? And you sure can. So let's not judge that. I mean, when we look at the ancient people, okay, David, we look at Solomon, we look at Abraham, we look at Jacob, they were extremely wealthy people.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah,
Okay? God does want to bless us.
he does.
Okay? Let's move on.
He does. Okay, chapter 23. Chapter 23. Then Job replied, "Even today my complaint is rebellion. His hand is heavy despite my groaning. Oh, that I knew where I might find him, that I might come to his seat. I would present my case before him and fill my mouth with arguments. I would learn the words which he would answer and perceive what he would say to me. Would he contend with me by the greatness of his power? No. He surely would pay attention to me. There the upright would reason with him, and I would be delivered forever from my judge. Behold, I go forward, but he's not there. Backward, but I cannot perceive him. When he acts on the left, I can't behold him. When he turns on the right, I cannot see him. But he knows the way I take. When he has tried me, I will come forth as gold."
Praise God that he knew that.
My foot has held fast to his path. I have kept his way and have not turned aside. I have not departed from the command of his lips. I have treasured the words of his mouth more than my necessary food. But he is unique. And who can turn him? What his soul desires, that he does. For he performs what is appointed for me, and many such decrees are with him. Therefore I would be dismayed at his presence. When I consider, I am terrified of him. It is God who has made my heart faint, and the Almighty who has dismayed me. But I am not silenced by the darkness, nor deep gloom which covers me. This is like...
He gets stronger as he goes.
You first. This is...
He gets
you're
stronger as he
speechless.
goes. What he basically is saying is that he doesn't believe what they're telling him, number one, and he wouldn't even believe about himself just because of what happened to him, okay, that it's his fault. And so often people do this to themselves. They beat themselves up worse than their friends beat them up. They beat them up worse. I mean, they go and convict themselves. There's a scripture verse that says there's power in the tongue. The power of life and death is in the tongue. So what you say to yourself is more important than what anyone else says to you, other than maybe God. Okay? And that is where people go deeper and deeper and deeper into depression, is that they continue to lie to themselves. I'm no good. I'm useless. I'll never make it in this world. That's all self-condemnation. That is not coming from God. God is trying to say, regardless of how deep you fall, I can lift you up. And Job seems to know that he is not going to be that kind of a person. I'm not going to say take self-condemnation. That's the worst kind of condemnation.
This chapter is the clearest evidence yet that there is something talking to Job within Job, deep within him, that is telling him the truth. Because according to everything that was the entire belief system that this man was obviously set in the midst of, is telling him, and his friends are echoing, that you've done something terrible. And Job Job knows he's not perfect. Job knows that if push comes to shove, iniquity can be found in him. But he knows the truth of it, that what's happened to me has nothing to do with me.
That's good.
How can he know that? There's no external evidence at all. Yet like you say, he's getting more convinced of that. He's getting strengthened in that as time goes on, which is proving, I think, this is making God's case, that what I have put in him is greater than anything you, Hasatan, you adversary, you enemy, you slanderer can do.
Amen.
And God is demonstrating in this man. He knew what he put in this man. Satan basically said to God, you're a fraud, you're a fake, and your handiwork is nothing. And God said, okay, you test it. See, well, now
and what does he do? Okay, Job's out there all by himself. Okay, and the enemy sends 4 people to attack him.
It's interesting.
4 people.
About the fourth,
righteous is always outnumbered.
The fourth one is interesting. Very, very interesting.
Well, we'll get to him shortly.
We'll get to him.
Want to move on?
Indeed. I'm good to go if you are.
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Job is continuing his discourse.
Yeah, that's why we need to continue.
Yeah, he's continuing. Why are times not stored up by the Almighty? And why do those who know him not see his days? Some remove the landmarks. They seize and devour flocks. They drive away donkeys of orphans. They take widows' ox for pledges. They push the needy aside from the road, and the poor of the land are made to hide themselves altogether. Behold, as wild donkeys in the wilderness, they go forth seeking food in their activity as bread for their children in the desert. They harvest their fodder in the field, glean the vineyard of the wicked, spend the night naked without clothing, and have no covering against the cold. They are wet with mountain rains and hug the rock for want of shelter. Others snatch the orphan from the breast, and against the poor they take a pledge. They cause the poor to go about naked without clothing, and they take away the sheaves from the hungry. Within the walls they produce oil, tread wine, presses, and thirst. From the city men groan, the souls of the wounded cry out, and God does not pay attention to folly. Others who have been with those who rebel against the light, they don't want to know its ways, nor abide in its paths. The murderer arises at dawn, he kills the poor and the needy. At night he is a thief. The eye of the adulterer waits for twilight, saying, no one will see me, and he disguises his face. No one will see me, but he disguises his face. Interesting. Mm-hmm. In the dark they dig into houses, they shut themselves up by day. They don't know the light, for the morning is the same to him as thick darkness, for he is familiar with the terrors of thick darkness. They are insignificant on the surface of the water. Their portion is cursed on the earth. They don't turn towards the vineyards. Drought and heat consume the snow waters, so does Sheol those who have sinned. A mother will forget him. The worm feeds sweetly until he's no longer remembered, and wickedness will be broken like a tree. He wrongs the barren woman, does no good for the widow, but he drags off the valiant by his power. He rises, but no one has assurance of life. He provides them with security, and they are supported, and his eyes are on their ways. They are exalted a little while, then they are gone. Moreover, they are brought low, like everything gathered up. Even like the heads of grain, they are cut off. Now, if it is not so, who can prove me a liar and make my speech worthless? He's spent an entire chapter saying, Sometimes life just makes no sense at all.
And that's what we should realize, that, unless you understand who God is, it really makes no sense at all. And even when you have a good foundation spiritually, you're not going to have all the answers. And anybody that thinks that they have the total truth is deceiving themselves. There's more to be learned. And revelation is given to those. In the early books of the Bible, it says, you will find me when you seek me with your whole heart. Mm-hmm. And we don't even know how much of our heart is committed to seeking after God.
Now, David pointed that out. Who can discern his errors? Keep back your servant, O Lord, from presumptuous sins.
Yeah. The crux that was coming to me earlier while we were in these chapters was that the man who's being attacked is more humble than the people who are attacking him. And that's usually the case, mm-hmm. because the person who attacks you thinks that they're right and you're wrong. And if you want to be humble, you reply with a soft answer. Now, Job's a little strong here, but he's under a lot of pressure. But, it says that a soft answer turns away wrath, mm-hmm. okay? Somebody attacks you, you can say, I love you anyway, and leave, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, you don't have to continue the argument.
I get the distinct impression that at this point he really doesn't care how they feel. He's not looking to comfort them. He doesn't care.
No, I'm not saying that he's.
No, I'm
talking to our
I guess I'm
audience
agreeing with you.
That they should not respond with vengeance. Mm. The word says the Lord says vengeance is mine. Mm. And we don't want to rejoice over even our enemies going down, because God doesn't rejoice over it, but because of justice sake, it happens. But he wishes that none should be lost. So.
Amen.
You ready to read again?
Almost.
Okay.
In the Psalms echo much of Job's suffering.
Yeah.
But they also echo much of Job's confidence.
Mm-hmm.
I find it interesting that the Psalms, which were written many, many years later.
1,000.
Right? What's changed? Nothing. Isn't that amazing?
The whole world, nothing's changed, and that's what we deceive ourselves.
As Solomon said, there's nothing new under the sun.
Yeah.
But yet
we got new products under the sun that are using the technology that was here from the beginning.
True.
And we, as human race, has not changed. That's why when they talk about peace, they can't be, because man refuses to change. He refuses to forgive. He refuses to love. He refuses to give up his own security and trust God, that God will work it out. There's none of that.
I think you just hit on the key point. Given everything that Job was going through, Job continued to trust God. Mm-hmm. Job knew that God's ways are higher than our ways, as it says elsewhere in Scripture. Mm-hmm. And he said, one of the things that he said, I think in an earlier chapter, where he basically saying, God is not a bully. Just because God would not just shut me down because he's bigger than me and can. Might does not make right. God is righteous. God will hear my plea.
Amen.
So confident. He knew God. And it turns out the Psalms tell us it's not circumstantial security that is going to win the day in our lives. Many times, trust in God results in a circumstantial security, but for the one who trusts in God, that circumstantial security is incidental. Their security comes from knowing their rock, their Redeemer. Like Psalm 91 said, you have made the Most High even how does
My
it
dwelling
put it?
place.
That's right.
Yeah.
The Most High, my refuge, even the Most High, your dwelling place. And Job, for Job, God was his dwelling place, because if it weren't so, he could never, ever have stood up to not only the onslaught of the enemy, but the onslaught of his friend's comfort.
Well, now, if you want to go further into that, when you get to Isaiah 53, the suffering servant, I mean, you're seeing the same thing repeat each other, questioning God, why is this happening to me when I haven't more or less done anything wrong? Okay? And you know, going through the excruciating illustration of pain and suffering beyond belief. So
Amen.
it's all connected. We can't departmentize things, you know.
It's all connected is right.
That's right.
I agree with
that's
that.
why we
Certainly in my life, that's the case.
That's why we illustrate that the Old Testament in the Christian Bible is not obsolete. That's why we remind you that, you know, you just can't read, you know, your New Testament. If you're a Christian, you need to read the Old Testament, and you'll see the human side of things more than the spiritual side. And the human side is what traps you, okay? It's getting back into realizing that humility is the important thing, and not all of this nonsense that we think sometimes is, oh, well, I'm very strong in this. Yeah, but look at your behavior, okay? Your beliefs are strong. They can't be strong if your behavior doesn't prove it. And that's really important.
That's a good point.
Well, we're into the show again. Got something to say quickly?
It's a privilege to be here. It's a privilege to be doing this with you. And I am getting so blessed by taking this deep dive into the book of Job. And thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of it.
Oh, we're having fun. We hope the audience enjoys it. It's tough, but it's a good basis. Once we understand this, you can move forward. So remember, if you want to see previous shows, go to thefutureofisrael.org. If you want to communicate with us, frank@thefutureofisrael.org. We'll be back here next week and continue. The end of this book is very exciting, so don't miss it. So, what is the next book we're going to study? I guess 24?
Yeah, it looks like 24
Read ahead.
is next up.
It might be a good thing to do, to read ahead.
Chapter 20, we'll be starting at chapter 25.
25. So read ahead, and you'll see the end if you keep going. And then when we comment on it, you'll have your own opinion. Remember, we're a research program here. We're not trying to preach you. We're not trying to teach you. We're just sharing our understandings of what these scriptures say, and we're discovering as we're doing it. I've read this book before, but every time I prepare for this show, it expands my horizons. Every time I share with a fellow Bible reader, it expands both of our knowledge. And we're really turning inwardly. We're turning inwardly to say, what do I need to do to correct myself? Which one of Job's friends do I tend to be like? All right? Take care now, and don't forget that we're here in your area. If you are seeing us on a computer because we're not in your area, write to me and we'll tell you how you can sponsor us. It's free, and it'll be put on in your area. You can watch it on your own TV. All right.